All right, I'll call to order the Town of Mount Desert Planning Board meeting for March 26, 2025. Welcome aboard. So let's kick it off with some introductions first. I'm William Hanley, I'm chair. And at the table, we have Tracy Loftus Keller, Daniel Burke, Ann Dalton, Gail Marshall, and Alan Kimberly. And that is the toughest part of the meeting, so thank you. And then, just before we get in it tonight too, I want to point out that we do have a agenda change tonight. We had, item 3C tonight. That was the conditional use approval application 005-2025 for the food truck at the College of the Atlantic. That application has been withdrawn, so we only have 2 items on the agenda tonight. Just wanted to point that out to anybody here for that. We are not reviewing it tonight. It's been withdrawn, so let's soldier on. So we've got first thing is approval of minutes, and I believe those are the minutes from the 12th.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Right. Let's
Ann
get,
was not there. so-
Right.
and
I wasn't
Ann
sure if I
wasn't
should say
there.
aye or not.
Yes.
No, that was
Yeah,
that
if you
one.
weren't there.
I received the minutes.
5-0.
Got it. All right. Let's do it. Item 3. So we have a couple of conditional use approval applications tonight, and the first one is. This is the second hardest part of the meeting, is making sure I get the owners' names correctly. Is conditional use approval application 003-2025, and tonight we have owners Magdalena Zavilia and Lissandro Miguens. The agent is Greg Johnston, GF Johnson Associates. Location is 13 Lower Dunbar Road, Seal Harbor. Tax map 31, lot 90. The zone is Village Residential 1, and the purpose is section 6B8, fences and walls. And we had a site inspection at 3:30
Wait.
today. Yes.
This was published in the Mount Desert Islander on March 13th. And letter dated March 7th went out to abutters.
All right, fantastic. I'll first ask if there's any conflict of interest on this.
Nope.
None heard, and we had a site inspection at 3:30, and I was not present, but Daniel, were you perhaps
I was
present?
present,
Would you-
along with Gail and Alan.
Fantastic.
We met Greg at the site. They're proposing to put up a 7-foot fence on the southern and eastern bounds of this property. So it's going to where it abuts the playground, and then 2 houses on the eastern side. 7 feet with 6-foot boards, so 6 inches below, and then 6 inches of post above. They're gonna do it without removing the existing trees. Perhaps some limbing, but the trees are gonna stay as is. I think that's about it.
Anything else to add, guys?
It's a residential neighborhood. There are houses within fairly close proximity to one another, well-established residential neighborhood. And it does have a Seal Harbor playground on one of the sides, on the south side.
I think the budding neighbor showed up. And they do have a wire fence separating the 2 houses. And the neighbor believes that these people own that wire fence. So I would only assume that that's probably going to come down.
All right. Would the applicant care to take it from there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Greg Johnson, representing the applicant. It simply is that I think the neighborhood is developed. There's a lot of different types of fences, and on this property itself, from the inside, there's a short chain link fence, another short wood fence along the easterly side, and then a wire fence. And this is sort of just makes a clean visual continuity through those two lines. But fences aren't uncommon in the area, and it's more for privacy. And again, they've picked a route that can go behind the trees. They're on the backside. There are some large, I think there's maybe sugar maples, but large trees. On the playground side, the large trees are on the playground side, and on the east side of this property, there are some large trees that don't have leaves. When they leaf out, you know, there's no branches up until you hit about 6 feet. So that's the goal. And of course, the structural side faces the inside, and the clean slate of the wood side faces out. That's the just.
All right, well, open it up for public comment if anybody out there has any questions of the applicant about this application. Now's the time.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, we all can hear you.
Okay. Hi, thanks so much for your consideration. I'm one of the abutting property owners. I just had a clarifying question. You said they're going to try to have the trees, the fence be behind the trees?
And this is, for the record, this is Kathleen Bell.
Correct.
All right.
The fence on the east side, which I think is the side they're abutting, that the fence would be on the east side of the trees, so the trees that are there are in the applicant's yard. I guess along your line, it looks like that wire fence is there. The owners weren't aware of who owns that wire fence, but when they staked the line, they were gonna reach out and say, do you want the wire fence to come and go? They were unclear whose fence that was when this goes in, but their fence has to be 18 inches off the line. And that is the lines between the trees and where the fence is going.
Okay, thanks. Our understanding when we bought the home was that they own the wire fence, so that would be consistent with, I think, what you learned today.
All right. Anyone else out there in Zoom world?
Well, I have a question.
You can have to say who you are.
I'm Bob Lombardo, Kathleen Bell's partner. I'm concerned about what's going to happen when those trees in between the fence and their house grow to a point where they start hitting the fence. If that's a concern at all. And it should be a concern, because I used to install fence, and you don't want a fence that close to trees because they will damage the fence. So I just don't want a damaged looking fence sometime down the future.
I think that that's a good point, in the fact that they're gonna stagger the posts to avoid, obviously, the tree roots. Those trees are pretty mature, they may grow into the fence, and if they have to stay up on maintenance of the fence, I think that's what a good neighborly deed would do. I think for going in new, there are some low branches on there, of course, there's no branches up till you get about 6 feet, which is the purpose of the fence. But certainly if the fence is damaged by the trees, then I think the fence needs to be fixed, and it's often, you'll see people coat their fence around a tree as it grows up through a wooden fence, describe it. So I guess that's like all I can add to that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant from the public? Going once. twice. Okay, I'm going to close public comment on this application and so be it. Public comment closed. Let's soldier on here. So as a board, I believe our first task is to find the application complete.
So moved.
Second.
Right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Second, would there be any opinions about potentially using
I
the,
move we use the short form for consideration of this application.
I'll second that.
all right, all of, everybody in favor of using the short form?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? And then we do this thing where we
I
find,
move approval of the application.
Second.
and then we don't vote on it, we press the pause button and have our discussion and review of the application, so. Let's do that. So. Before you should, well, I'll say what I have in front of me. I have the application, I have the short form checklist and my handy land use ordinance if it is so needed, and we're gonna now follow along and begin with the review of section 6A, general performance standards. So,
Can I just mention one thing to, like, anybody listening to the public? The
yep,
reason we make a motion and then don't, like, right, without even having looked like we looked at it,
yep,
is that it's just, it's sort of parliamentary procedure to have an active motion on the floor for the board to consider.
mhm,
It doesn't, I made that motion, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna vote to approve this. It's simply to get the matter before the public for discussion, before the board for discussion, and then we'll actually take a vote once we've run through the whole application.
you know, Gail, I think we're gonna have you explain that in other meetings too,
Yes.
because that has often been a head scratcher, but I have always understood it to be parliamentary procedure,
Okay,
so,
I just didn't want people to think, oh, they've already decided.
You could have a handout.
yeah. We should have a handout. There you go.
Hey, add that to the
Let-
list.
Yes, let Noel know. we need
Do
a
something.
handout.
Right, we're not.
Hey.
Mhm. All right, let's do it. 6A1 compatibility. And here they talk about the physical size, that it's a proposed wooden stockade privacy fence, 7 feet tall. You know, it's constructed to approximately 210 lineal feet and it's got securing to steel post approximately 6 inches above ground level. Then about visual impact, the parcel is surrounded by private residential parcels on the east, north, and west side. South side of the lot is the Seal Harbor Playground. Proposed wooden fence will not block scenic views, and no registered scenic view exists in the vicinity of the project. And then the structural side of the fence faces the interior of the lot. Proximity to other structures, no structures will be affected by the project, and all the setbacks have been met. And the density of development, the project doesn't affect any of the density of development, improves privacy in a moderately dense neighborhood. So see application. 6A2, erosion and sedimentation control. They talk about that all Maine DEP BMPs are to be employed. Soil disturbance will be minimized by augering post holes. See application. 6A3, highway safety. There's no roads or drives will be built to access the fence location. Access to the project will utilize the existing parking area and lawn. And there's plenty of off-street parking on site, so see application. 6A4, impact on town services. Applicant says no town services are required for completion of this project, so see application. Land suitability. And that's another point of clarification, like if the applicant is writing an answer like that into one of the review criteria sections, it does not necessarily mean it's NA, and we've historically noted it as C application because there is an answer there
Some data.
or a description.
Right.
Yeah, then. Land suitability, 6A5. Existing fences are in the area and along the same property lines as the proposed fence. The land is suitable for fence construction, soil disturbance to be minimized by augering the posts. See application. 6A6, lighting outdoor. There, the applicant says NA, because there is no lighting. 6A7, stormwater. Yeah, here we go. So the applicant says that the fence will not block stormwater as it is to be elevated to allow for flow below the fence. The ground below the fence remains pervious and cannot measurably increase runoff. And then the applicant checked NA. So perhaps we should check applicable standard met. So
Sure.
let's have them correct that on the original application. So C application, 6A8. Again, let's 6A8. The applicant states that the proposed fence will avoid trees and the chosen path has eliminated the need for tree removal. And instead of NA, perhaps we check applicable standard met for
No, I'd
that.
say that's NA because they're not
That's-
removing any trees.
They're not removing any
They're-
trees.
Working, they're behind the trees.
Yeah.
So they're not clearing any trees to install the fence.
Mhm. Well, there you go. So NA. And then 689, there are no applicant says NA, there's no noxious elements produced by this project. So the findings of fact are as presented by the applicant in the attached application. And the conclusion of law is that the proposed use is in compliance with all standards of section 6A for which the standard has been met.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, 6B7. I'm going to say that all of these are NA except for the reason we're here. Section 6B8, so 6B1 agriculture is NA, 6B7 excavation or filling is NA, and 6B8 is why we're here. So going to 6B8 in the application. And here's where the applicant describes the project again, is that the fence is to be 7 feet in height, structural side to face the interior of the lot. The fence will not run along any roads, sidewalks, or right of ways. The south side fence will end at approximately 10 feet before the edge of the roadway, and the fence will not block any scenic views as there are no registered scenic views in the vicinity of the project. They say applicable standard met. And I'm going to check the application. And the rest of 6B12 is NA, and that's the rest of section 6B is NA, and that's 6B12 mineral exploration and extraction, 6B15 sign regulations, 6B17 cell towers, 6B18 animal husbandry. 6B20 mobile food vendors, 6B21 rooming house, and 6B22 hotels and motels. So the findings of fact are that the proposed use will include none of the specific activities or land uses described in section 6B, except for the applicable sections noted above, which are section 6B8. And the conclusion law is that section 6B is not applicable except for section 6B8, for which the standard has been met.
So moved. So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, well, section 6A is entirely NA because we are not in the shoreline zone. 6C, thank you. So the findings of fact for section 6C are that the proposed lot is entirely outside of the shoreline zone, and the conclusion was that section 6C is not applicable.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then because it's not in the shoreline zone, we do not do section 5(9). And then I typically ask if there are any permit conditions to this. Not hearing any permit conditions. All right. Then we go back and press play on our Sony Walkman. And return to the original motion to approve. All those in favor of approving the application? Aye. Opposed? Congratulations. Yeah.
Guys, do you wanna come up and,
It's 8-7 on you.
yeah. It's just changing from NA to applicable standard next.
Everybody had a Sony Walkman.
Oh, 2 or 3, yeah.
I begged my parents.
Oh,
Sony Walkman.
thank you.
It's revolutionary.
Mhm.
You didn't have to carry your 8-truck player.
I never.
You know,
You've never had a portable 8-truck
I
player?
never had Dodge Charger, what can you say? Girl, with a turntable.
Yeah. Yes. Okay,
Oh,
that would go
did you-
away.
I'm sorry if I
Yeah,
vote.
yeah.
Oh, you don't vote?
Yeah.
That's all right.
So you wanna put that?
Yep,
in-
I do. Mhm.
in There, and so we got that. Okay, we got that. And we're gonna keep that. All right,
You don't want to keep.
No, as it goes with the.
so item 3B on the agenda tonight, we have conditional use approval application 004-2025. Owner is Edgar Scott, the third revocable trust. I assume that abbreviation is what that stands for.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Agent is Greg Johnson, GF Johnson Associates. Location is 201 Huntington Place, Northeast Harbor, tax map 24, lot 142-001. The zone is Village Residential 2, and the purpose is section 6B8, fences and walls. And we had a site inspection at 4 o'clock, and was this one advertised?
Yes, it was. It was also in the same publication on March 13th in the Mount Desert Islander.
And the abutters were
Oh, sorry.
notified.
Yes, by letter dated March 7th.
All right.
Yep.
So we had a site inspection at 4 o'clock, and Gail, would you care to report upon your
This
observations?
is the Huntington Road in Northeast Harbor, and there are a series of duplex condos in that area, some of which have long had fences along the road. This is another condo structures that do not have fences in front of them. There is a stand of trees in front of it, and one of the building that is closest to the Huntington has had an addition, and the addition has sort of taken up all their yard, most of their pre-existing yard. So their proposal is to fence a significant portion of along Huntington Drive and Huntington Road, And to bring in enough fill and do enough landscaping, removing a fair number of the trees. But not those right near the road. To create a lawn, a level lawn area for the owners of the property.
Okay, anything else to add to that? Any other observations from the board? All right, well then I'll turn it over to the applicant then.
And should we do conflict of interest?
And let's do that. Thank you, Heidi. She's on it. Is there any conflict of interest on the board with
No.
this
Nope.
application? None heard. Now I'll turn it over to the applicant.
So there's two parts to the application. One is the fill, which is about 200 yards. Planning board threshold is 150, just over that. We spent the time, we surveyed sort of the trees that were out there, the larger trees, and partly because the backyard faces an intersection of both Huntington Lane and Huntington Road. That latter half of the road, their trees are fairly spindly. So after we determined where the buffer is sufficient for them, that's why it's quarantined to this side, and where they were looking for screening for sort of the backyard and headlights. So the fence was planned outside to allow, trees to allow on both sides of the fence, keep the buffer, and then simply a flowing lawn that allows them some exterior space. They also planning to landscape in and around that, at the edge of the lawn to sort of enhance it. There's no necessity for that on permit, but there's figured I'd add that. Again, it's a wooden fence, not uncommon for the area. And happy to entertain any questions.
All right, well, I'll open it up to the public with any questions for the applicant. Now's your chance. And I'm hearing nothing but crickets, so. Not, yes. So we don't have any public in the room. Not hearing anything from anybody online. So I'm gonna close the public comment. So public comment is closed. And let's first see what the board thinks about the completeness of this
I move the
application.
application is complete.
Second.
All those in favor?
I,
Opposed? And then,
I move we use the short form for considering this application.
Second that.
all those in favor of using the short form?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And then perhaps would we have a motion for approval?
We do. I make the
Second.
motion.
Second.
Then let's press that pause button and get into it. So here we are again. I have the short form checklist in front of me. I have the application and my land use ordinance.
Can I ask one thing first?
Absolutely.
Being that this is a condo association, I assume, is there any requirement from said condo association that's going to affect anything with this said permit?
I think I could comment that the lots are owned individually in there, so I think it's a fair question. This particular lot, which has 2 units on it, we actually thought of that and sought out letter of authorization from the 2 owners of that lot, not just the applicant, and so in the letter of authorization, you'll see both owners of this particular lot have signed the letter of authorization for us to be here for the permit.
Okay.
All right. 6A, general performance standards. 6A1, my favorite, compatibility. So under compatibility, we look at physical size. And the applicant says that the proposed fence is 6 to 8 feet in height, depending upon topography. Excavation fill of approximately 210 cubic yards proposed for outdoor space. Visual impact, similar fences surround the existing development and neighborhood. Buffers maintained along the road. The fence purpose is to minimize visual impacts to the residents, which abuts 2 roads. Lawn area is to create a more visually attractive outdoor space. Proximity to other structures. No structures will be affected by this project. All setbacks to roads and right-of-ways to be met. Density of development. Structure does not affect the density of development, improves privacy in a moderately dense neighborhood. So see application. 6A2 erosion and sedimentation control. Applicant talks about that Maine DP BMTs are to be employed, hay bales and silt fence installed down gradient of all disturbed soils, to be loamed and seeded for permanent stabilization. So see application. Highway safety, 6A3. The applicant says the private property is used for construction access, no parking of equipment in public way required. See application. Impact on town services. The applicant says no town services are required for the completion of this project. There's an answer there, so I'm gonna say see application. And then 6A5, land suitability. Existing fences in the area are within the same parcel of the proposed fence. The land is suitable for fence construction, outdoor space construction. Many residents, including present site, contain lawn areas which the fill is designed to expand upon. Suitable soils available for evidence by existing sites. So see application. Lighting outdoor, NA, there is not any lighting proposed. 6A7, stormwater. So the applicant says about the fence is that it's open bottom to allow runoff directions to be maintained. Fill. There's a sand and gravel base for lawn, improves the permeability of the soil. Dry well infiltration trenches are planned at the toe of the slope. See application. Vegetation. Applicant says excavation removes brush and 4 trees on the interior of the lot. Exterior buffer to remain on Huntington Road and Huntington Lane. Trees are maintained on both the interior and exterior of the fence to maintain a sense of depth, the insertion of the fence to the landscape. So applicant says applicable standard met and see application. 6A9, dust, fumes, vapors, odors, and gases. The applicant says NA, none of these are emitted by the fence or lawn construction. So the findings of fact are as presented by the applicant in the attached application. The conclusion of law is that the proposed use is in compliance with all standards of section 6A for which the standard has been met.
So moved.
Second.
Right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Right, section 6B, specific performance standards for activities and land uses. So 6B7, the applicant, and that's excavation or filling. And the applicant says that erosion control measures employed, landscape yards are common in the village community. The import of fill is required to enhance the space for owners, but also offer a plant buffer for privacy. So see application, and just jumping back on my checklist, I have 6B1 agriculture as NA and 6B8 fences and walls. Well, the applicant describes the project again, and they say that the fences are for privacy and permitted uses. There are permitted uses. Structural side is facing inward. Native wood materials used for the fence are complemented by other decorative fences in the development. So C application. And the rest of 6B is NA, and that would be 6B12, mineral exploration. 6B15, sign regulations. 6B17, wireless communication facilities. 6B18, animal husbandry 2. 6B20, mobile food vendors. 6B21, rooming house, and 6B22, hotels and motels are all NA. So the findings of fact are that the proposed use will include none of the specific activities or land uses described in section 6B, except for the applicable sections 6B7 and 6B8. The conclusion law is that section 6B is not applicable except for sections 6B7 and 6B8, for which the standard has been met.
So moved.
Second.
Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right. Moving on, section 6C, shoreline zoning standards. This is entirely NA because it's in village residential 2. So the proposed lot is entirely, the findings of fact then are, the proposed lot is entirely outside the shoreline zone. And the conclusion of law is that section 6C is not applicable.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and because it's not in the shoreline zone, we don't do section 5.9. And then we come upon any permit conditions for this project. Hearing that there are any. So let's circle back and press play on the approval vote. Everybody in favor of approving the application as submitted?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Congratulations.
That's all right, well, I don't know why we have two separate applications, honestly. Maybe I'll.
All right, item 4 on the agenda tonight, other.
Yes, we do have other, I just want, if we have still a guest who is waiting for item 3, we just wanna remind them that item 3 application has been withdrawn, and so we're not considering that.
That is correct, and I'll say that again, that the item 3 on the agenda tonight, that's 3C was withdrawn, so we're not talking about the food truck up at Beach Hill Farm tonight. So we're on item 4, other.
So I just want to touch base with you about these committee conversations that we had last week or so. We're gonna be in a situation, well, we're already looking to what we're gonna be doing for this next year. And we're in a situation in which it's impossible to get a committee together to meet during the summer. But as Noel suggested, the planning board needs to. And there are some issues that it makes sense for us to get solid feedback from the planning board with Noel present. Hopefully, depending on what our workload is for applications, hopefully during some of these next few months' meetings. So one of them is to just look back at the subdivision rewrite to try to articulate it as best we can. Basically how we think, not rewriting it, but how it would be rewritten to function better if we had a magic wand. And then that would include dealing with how do you deal with affordable housing projects? How do you deal with, do you do something about mobile homes in the subdivision ordinance, cluster housing? how would we handle those, and also just the process itself, is it as clear and appropriate as it can be for all concerned? The other question that comes out of that is we have no site plan review process. And the question is, should we? Would that be something that everyone would benefit from when you get a situation like you've got a lot that's going to be substantially totally redeveloped or redeveloped in a rather intensive way, and and I'm talking on the edge of my understanding of site plan review ordinances in general, so I can't go any further than that without falling off the edge of that earth. But it would be good to have a discussion, the planning board have a discussion with Noel, to determine how much of a priority and how much of a benefit that would be. We also grappled with whether or not we slog through all the current allowed use tables and definitions. There's been some persistent suggestion that breaking it down the way it's currently broken down is confusing and creates a need to sort of jury rig things from time to time. And then the other question is, should the definitions be updated and the allowed uses be updated? Should we go to a system that says, if it ain't in the allowed uses, try to be as comprehensive as possible, if it ain't in the allowed uses, you can't do it unless you amend the ordinance. And so it would be good to hear the planning board's perspective on that sort of stuff too. So we're hoping to engage the planning board itself. I just don't have the people who are gonna show up. I tried last year to meet, I said, we're gonna meet all summer. It's like, yeah, no, summer. So,
My only comment as chair about that, and that's fantastic, but I want to make sure we're not putting the cart before the horse. And we're determining like policy or program direction for another committee. Cause usually the land use committee kind of has like the a la carte menu, right?
Mhm.
For us, and they come to us and they said, okay, we processed this through to this point.
mhm.
And then let's get the planning board's input on that. And I want to just be careful that the planning board isn't like initiating it, but we're reacting to it.
Well, funny
Makes any
thing
sense.
that when we, we had a discussion last year at the advisory committee about what our role is, and Rick Moores was there as the select board rep and had a rather, I'll characterize it as a somewhat constricted view of what the portfolio of the Luso committee is. And so I was tasked with writing a statement of purpose for the Luso, which I think I shared here, and also the select board voted on it. And in that, we're pretty explicit about saying we are not the committee that initiates changes. We are the committee that is tasked with attempting to craft those changes, but not be the committee that says, hey, it would be cool if we did this. That should either come from the planning board or from the select board. And if the public comes and says, hey, we'd like to do this, take it to the planning board or probably the select board, and then get direction that we'd like the advisory committee, which, remember, it is only a committee. It's not, it has no decision-making authority. So it's kind of a chicken and egg.
Yeah, of
question.
course, yeah, no, there's some.
Well, planning board typically is the ones that are supposed to be writing and creating amendments to the ordinance. You
When
guys,
have we
that's
done
kind of-
that?
huh?
When have we really initiated?
You've done it at the
that?
beginning.
Yeah.
You did it at the beginning, but then you guys got overworked and too many applications came before you,
Yeah.
so the land use advisory committee
Was
came
created.
to life.
Yeah,
Gail, can you just, for me, the difference between crafting it and initiating it? If crafting means to be creating, and initiating means starting. it up.
Initiating means we're sitting around thinking, what would it be good for us to have?
Yeah.
Let's have a site review process, as opposed to. I mean, we could bring the question up, but as opposed to some other committee, like this committee that's actually doing the work, or the select board, which is the overall, authority here, saying it would be nice if we considered whether or not we should have a site plan review process, and here's why. And then the committee would be tasked with attempting to create that, to craft it.
To credit.
Does state of Maine have any guidelines that we can utilize for a lot of this?
I would assume that Noel is gonna say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't be like, you wouldn't be asked to say, let me think, what should I put in a site plan review? process? I mean, there are models, we have a planner who works with us, and so we would be expecting. We would be talking about the general direction, and we would be expecting those drafts to be largely created by the person we paid to help us do that.
I assume if we have those in front of us, then we could see what.
Yeah, we can say, yeah, we've run with.
We can do more, we can't do less.
The subdivision, we've run into real trouble trying to interpret this or do that, or the workflow of this is a mess, and maybe if we did it this way or something like that, and then, Noel. See what you can craft for that, see what you can do.
Well, I hope that we will have more affordable housing subdivision projects coming up, as they are very well needed.
Well, we don't
And
initiate those.
That would be something that if we can be ahead of the game when those arrive, that would be good.
So that's, I'm just reporting what we discussed, and we can have. If we have time to have anything like that on the agenda, then we would want to have Noel here, and he would help,
Absolutely.
he would help. Work us through that
I
discussion.
would request that our
Yes.
planning consultant is present.
Yes, the assumption is that would happen,
Mhm.
so.
Great.
I'm usually the bearer of news about more work, but. Sorry.
It's nice having a lower workload during July and August.
Well, I just can't get people to come to meetings, it's just not
My home,
on volunteer.
my
committee. I
home
just-
turns into a hotel, even though I'm not zoned to a hotel.
Ah,
But since I don't charge,
Are we
Yes.
still on the?
that's when friends and family
Okay,
invade,
okay.
but I'm always available.
Can I mention, Kim, about the court upholding the planning board's decision on the quarry, which is very proud of our board. And after, I think it was 10 or 12 years of deliberation and
Started in 2013.
I think you showed us a
Disputation.
stack of papers like so.
sure where it goes from that, but thankful for everybody's time and effort through all of that.
Just you two. And
Yeah,
Kim.
and Kim,
Thank you.
yeah. And Heidi.
And Heidi.
Heidi, gosh.
Yeah, oh my
Holy
gosh.
smokes.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot.
I wrote 100 pages minutes on that one.
Oof,
We remember that.
yeah.
Maybe you should get a raise.
Last I counted, we had 32 meetings, but I think we had more than that.
Okay, that's a lie.
All right,
Just on that application.
thank you.
And out there in the public land, anyone who hasn't taken the comprehensive plan survey should do so.
They can also be done online as well.
When's the rewrite for the comprehensive plan? What's the window for the rewrite of the not a particular date, but generally when?
I don't think, that's certainly, if it gets to town meeting next year, it would
Yeah,
be,
about a year.
it would be blazing saddles. That's my impression, I'm not,
The last rewrite was 2018 or?
not, no, nine,
Nine.
it's overdue.
It's like the E series. The E series. All right, any other? Well, that just leaves us one
I
last.
move to adjourn.
Second,
All those in favor?
I.
Aye.
Opposed? There you go.